The following is a special presentation of Tony Kurre Radio.
Welcome back to the Keefer and Kurre show right here on the TKR app. You can hear the show at least 5 days a week. And I'll just be honest with you, a kid just got done doing his Need to Know show. I'm not even allowing him to go take a whiz. I'm not allowing him to take a breath or even take a drink of water before we start.
I'm like a sled dog. Just abuse me, Tony. It's okay.
I'm throwing the tennis ball back into the swimming pool again. Go get it, boy.
Yeah.
I wanted to see how you react to the last 30 minutes while I've been listening to Need to Know, which I listen to every single week. And, of course, you can hear that on every industry. And also see us, of course, every Saturday morning. We had Paul Feinbaum on this past week, which is great. I was thinking about talking about Paul on our Keefer and Kurre show because I knew it was probably going to bring a lot of listeners. But I want to talk about some movies.
Okay, great.
I know you're a movie kind of guy, and here's where I go to maybe 2 movies a year. Okay? And it's not that I don't like movies. It's just that I've never been a really big movie buff. Every time I go, I really enjoy it. I usually go with my 18, sometimes 19-year-old, depending on when we've gone. And we're usually watching some type of blockbuster. We always had this thing where we would always go see the latest King Kong movie or the latest Godzilla movie or the latest Jurassic Park movie. And those would basically be the only movies. And once in a while, I go see The Secret Pets of World or something like that with the kids, or go see an animated movie. But something I realized, and I was looking through the movies right now, and of course, I saw a lot of these trailers coming out during the Super Bowl. A lot of people would say that those were some of the best commercials we had for Super Bowl 58 were movie trailers. You would have never said that 10 or 15 years ago.
Yeah.
And then on the heels of what happened with COVID, when all the movie theaters closed down, you talked about AMC and some of the biggest movie theaters in the world talking about how they were going to have to file Chapter 8. They were done. They were finished. And then you had all these celebrities come back out and say, listen, this is the venue. This is the forum. This is where we should have our movies played. You mentioned the Sphere, Las Vegas, which is capable of showing some type of IMAX type of movies, which is just right off the wall crazy.
It's
cool,
IMAX
right?
on steroids. It's
It really
amazing.
is. What I'm wondering, though, is just go with me here. King Kong times Godzilla, the New Empire, Planet of the Apes, a brand new movie out, Ghostbusters, another Ghostbusters coming out. And I want to say this is the 5th or 6th one. This one, of course,
Yep.
it's got Bill
But this
Murray
one's
back.
different. This one's different, though, because Bill Murray and Dan Aykroyd are back, which is really, really cool, I think.
And it is really cool, and it looks kind of scary. It doesn't look like that fun.
Yeah, it looks more
Ghostbusters.
serious. Yeah.
Listening to Ray Parker Jr. Go Busters doesn't feel the same way.
I don't think we're gonna have the Frosty or whatever the snowman guy threatening to be the destroyer of the world in this one.
Exactly. Jake Gyllenhaal with a brand new Roadhouse movie. Would you have ever thought we'd have Roadhouse 2 come out? Then, of course, we have Dune Part 2. We have Kung Fu Panda Part 4. We have another music venue out. So far, we've had an Elton John movie out. We've had a Rolling Stones movie out. We've had a Johnny Cash movie out. We've had an Elvis Presley movie out. We've had a Queen movie out. And now we got a Bob Marley movie out, which I have not seen, but I really want to go see it just because I love Bob Marley movie. And then on top of that, I want to throw in the Beyonce flick and the Taylor Swift flick. And now all of a sudden, all these artists are coming out and saying, if you can't see our concerts because they're too damn expensive, maybe if we would charge you $25 or $30 to actually watch it on a big giant screen at IMAX, you would feel like you were actually at one of our concerts. Would it be the same? I don't know. My point is, every one of those movies, which is airing right now, all at the same time, are all remakes. They're all rehashes. They're all movies that we have seen before over the last 40 or 50 years. And I don't know what the topic is here. Is this a good thing? Are we running out of things to watch? Are we running out of new ideas for movies? What does it say about the music industry? A lot of people sit there and say that hip hop is never new. It's just they're just sampling old pieces of music for hip hop. That's the only thing they do is they're sampling. There is no new music out there anymore. It's just a different way of singing it or a different melodic structuring of a particular song.
Having 15 lyrics instead of 10.
Exactly.
Oh, good grief. Don't get me started.
And then you want to throw in Star Wars. There's a new Star Wars movie out. I thought that thing was supposed to end after 3 or 4 movies. That thing's still going on. Every time I see a new Star Wars flick, is that part of the Lucas thing? Is that's still the Star Wars that I'm missing from the 1970s? When I see a Star Wars trailer, is that the Star Wars, or is there a totally different Star Wars out there that I'm not aware of? You want to throw out Avatar? It just seems like to me that there's just a lot of movies about crap we've been watching for 30 or 40 years. Am I wrong?
Yeah. Well, no, you are not wrong. And let me tell you why that is. Because it's really a simple answer. Movies, studios, Hollywood is big business, and big business has to have product to sustain itself. And what happens, Tony, is we live in an era, and as you mentioned, I just recorded Need to Know, and I'm talking about the existential threats for our country in terms of what it was founded to be. And one of the reasons that you continue to see these recycled, just different themes, and you've touched on a lot of them. There have been like 400 Spider-Man movies, but there's so many different people, different companies that have pieces of that, certain characters. This is particularly in the comics, the Marvel world and all the superhero movies you see, the rights disputes of all these characters leads to each of them doing some different format of movie based on the same characters. I know Disney and Marvel and a third one too, all have the rights to like Spider-Man in some way, shape, or form. So you get, the reason you're dizzied by the same movie seemingly coming out is because each company's got their own version of a movie, and sometimes they all come out the same year. So it's just ridiculous. But getting back to the point, Hollywood has gotten so preachy and didactic in terms of demanding us think the way that they want us to think, that movies have in recent years, any new ideas are nixed. But no, this is not touching on the social issues enough. That we need to do a movie about a trans cello player in an orchestra who's being discriminated against, because we want to win an Oscar and be heralded by the elite community. And those movies go to the box office and they're just a lead turd. They just plunk to the floor and they're gone. Don't make any money. Nobody wants to see them. Do you want to go sit for 2.5, or some of those movies are 3.5 hours, and be lectured to about how you should be thinking about other people that are different than you and whatnot? I mean, if you have that agenda, there's plenty of places to get that. You don't need to go and spend $20 and $60 at the concession stand to go watch one of those movies about a hooky dancer in the Coral Islands that's being discriminated against. Bottom line is, so what happens? The studio starts looking at the bottom line and goes, "Holy shit, we're underwater here. We need to crank up another Superman movie, or let's break Godzilla back out." Here's my favorite, and I love it because my whole life, Tony, when James Bond shows back up, I'm there, man. I'm front and center. I love James Bond, 007, the whole macho character, the toxic masculinity. It is just, it's the best. Shaken, not stirred. Do you know Shaken, not stirred? Just a sidebar. This is something fascinating to me. Shaken, not stirred. A guy acquired the Smirnoff Vodka Company way back in the early 60s. And he had a relationship with Ian Fleming because he was a British guy originally who had migrated to the United States. Ian Fleming, the author of all the James Bond books, he got Ian Fleming to influence in one of the early Bond movies, I think maybe even the first one, Dr. No, James Bond stepped to the bar and said, "Vodka martini, shaken, not stirred." And that was a favor or a payoff by this guy who owns Smirnoff, because up to that point, martinis were strictly gin. And he just bought a vodka company. So he actually influenced that being in the Bond movie. As soon as James Bond ordered a vodka martini, shaken, not stirred, vodka went through the ceiling. It became the most popular liquor in the world just from that one bit of influence in that movie, which I just find absolutely fascinating. But here's the James Bond thing. They're in production for a new James Bond movie now. James Bond got killed in the last movie. I hope I'm not breaking anything to anybody, but incoming missiles were there, and he realized he was hopelessly trapped. He was up on top of a 300-foot wall or something on the front of a castle. They were destroying this thing at the very end of the movie, and all this sad music, and he just kind of looked and took a sigh and was resigned to his fate. So they killed James Bond off after 50 something years and 27 movies. Well, Bond is back coming up this fall.
Well, so, I didn't see it. Thanks. I appreciate you filling me in.
Oh, yeah. Sorry about that. I thought the cat was out of the bag after 5 years.
But here's the beautiful thing about what we see here, because I think I want to say that the first show that ever did this was Dallas. When they killed off Bobby,
oh yeah,
there was no way to bring Bobby back, and then they had contract disputes, and they figured out they had to bring him back. What they do? They did a dream sequence, right?
Yeah.
So they brought him back, and they said the entire year was just a one long dream. So you're either going one long dream, or you're going preem time. You're going primo time. You're not going. In other words, it's not a movie that is following a timeline chronological. Now you can go back, and for example, The Quiet Place, which I thought, was one of the greatest movies. The first one was fantastic. Of course, they killed off the father, and I really hated it because I thought that kid that was in that movie, and he also produced the movie, he was gone. And then, of course, they went and did another movie with him in parts of it as they did flashbacks. And now they're doing a third, The Quiet Place, where it's actually how it all started, how these crazy animals came to Earth in the first place. And of course, it'll be just an award winner, just a blockbuster, because it'll be a fantastic horror movie. So, I mean, you can kill all the people off you want.
Yeah.
If you want to bring them back, there will be a way. Now, obviously, we know this James Bond's not coming back because Daniel Craig's already said, I'm done. I'm not going to do any more.
Yeah, they named the new guy, and I forgot what his name is, but they have designated, because there was a lot of, once again, the politically correct world, there was a lot of push for a female James Bond, a trans James Bond, ethnic James Bond,
black James Bond. I mean,
which that would have been fine. There's a lot of black British guys, and I'm good with that. But I really am having a hard time, picturing James Bond as being, any other kind of, non-macho guy, because that's who the character is.
Absolutely. Listen, and I'm not poo-pooing on the idea of taking a great movie idea and taking one of their characters. And obviously, I love Despicable Me 1, 2, 3, 4. I believe a fifth one's coming out. And they, of course, went and did the Minions, which turned off, because we've had spinoffs their entire life. How many TV shows spun off of All in the Family?
Oh, tons.
I mean, the Good Times, the Jeffersons, Maude. I mean, we go one after Alice. I mean, we're all about in the 60s and 70s. If something works, we're going to keep going back to it. We're going to keep hitting it over the head until that horse is dead. And of course, if you get spinoffs and they're funny, they're great, knock yourself out. I'm not saying we shouldn't do spinoffs, but it is funny. The fact that right now, if you go to a movie theater, you're watching Beyonce, you're watching Dune Part 2, everything's got a number after it. Everything's got a number after.
Oh yeah.
You got Roadhouse 2, you got Ghostbusters 5, you got Planet of the Apes 7, you got King Kong Godzilla 6. You got, and then don't even get me started with, of course, the Marvel movies and everything else. Listen, the movies are good. I mean, I'm not saying they're lousy. I'm just wondering sometimes, do we have any new material out there, or are we just taking old material and old stuff that works and just taking it out there and just making something out of it?
And I have a theory on that too, Tony. First of all, like I say, the studio wants to make these socially significant movies, but the other problem is, and I don't want to get typecast here or stamped, although it might be appropriate, of being the old guy, yelling at kids to get off my lawn. But I really believe that there is a serious lack of creativity now, because this generation of young, talented people didn't come up having to use their imagination or spending a lot of time to think about things to create. They've been spoon-fed every bit of information that's available in the universe since the time they, first could speak and be handed a phone. You know, it's a situation now where I think creativity is in really a crisis period because people don't have new ideas. So let's just crank up another, 27th movie for Star Wars.
No, I mean, and again, like you said, it's big business. If they're making money, there's no if something's making money, there's going to be a follow
Yeah,
up to it.
keep going to the well, baby.
And I mean,
until it's dry.
and that's okay with me until it runs dry. And the funny thing is, and I guess a lot of people would say, and I didn't see either one of them. Would you not say The Godfather 2 was better than Godfather 1? I always heard that argument. Is that true?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
So I mean, it just goes to show that you can actually make something better, because a lot of people would say it's never a good the second time around as it is the first time around, but evidently it is.
Yeah,
So
Godfather's a great example because Godfather 1 was such a brilliantly done movie, but you walked out of there and you had a personal association with the characters. I mean, that was the secret, the powerful cast they assembled for that movie. So Godfather 2 coming right back on top of that, basically, because that was less than a year, that sequel. But it wasn't really a sequel, it was more of a prequel because Vito Corleone had died in The Godfather, Sonny had died. This was more of a movie. The Godfather 2 was brilliant because it was modern day Michael Corleone moving the family out to Nevada, but it was also, as he reflected and dealt with the problems he was having, he reflected on the career of his father and Robert De Niro recreating young Vito Corleone, even immigrating, under sea. Remember the scene? How powerful was that? Explaining who this guy was when he witnessed his mother being shot and his brother being killed in Sicily because there was a family dispute with the Godfather there, and they were about to shoot him. He was like a 5-year-old kid because he would grow up someday and avenge the death of his family if they didn't kill him off. Well, he gets away and gets to America. And remember, he comes back in that movie, and that guy who was the Godfather that basically killed his entire family was some old 85-year-old dude, and he sliced him up like a mackerel.
Yep.
So the movie was brilliant of telling the rest of the story, but also going back to exactly what happened that created all the building blocks for the Godfather franchise.
Well, something I think that could actually play in, and I know a lot of people are freaking out about the AI situation, is something that may actually play to an advantage of AI opponents. And that being that, when they did, for example, Back to the Future, they knew it was going to be a hit movie. Steven Spielberg came out and said in Back to the Future 2, they started cutting parts for Back to the Future 3 while they were still doing 2 because they knew it was going to be a trilogy. They knew there were going to be at least 3 of them. And they're like, since we've got you here on, well, it's going to pay you a little extra. I've got some things for number 3. And that's why they already had the 3 trailer. That was played at the end of 2. A lot of people are like, what is this? They already got a trailer out for 3. Well, certainly did. But I mean, are you against Harrison Ford, for example, them using AI on the last Indiana Jones movie? Obviously, he's 80 years old. They used AI on him to show him as a 15 or 16-year-old, not to show him as a Harrison Ford from the 1 or 2 or 3 or Lost the Raiders, whatever. Not to show him that way to cheat his length of his life, but to show a different part of his life at a different time. But would you be okay with, for example, say you want Daniel Craig back in James Bond? Would you be okay with James Bond, Daniel Craig, being in that role for the next 50 years if he never looked any different?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think it's fine. If they can make that happen, because if the movies are good and the storyline's good, and I applaud too. And I mean, I talked about creativity in scripts and concepts. It's a society that's more prone to support established franchises. That's just kind of the way we're built. But I do applaud Hollywood for coming up with creative ideas like Bond. They don't explain what they're doing. They just turn the page and start in a different era, and it's just James Bond now. It has no links to Sean Connery or Roger Moore back in the day, although I thought it was brilliant. In one of the last Daniel Craig movies, he's walking through some old kind of like warehouse at MI6, and they've got on the wall just in the background some of the old gadgets from some of the Bond movies of the past like a museum. It's just a subtle reminder that this is all tied together. But the Daniel Craig Bonds took a whole different direction, a lot more hardcore, a lot more really serious storylines that are very contemporary.
I
You
loved
didn't,
it.
yeah, you didn't see him with a bunch of gadgets and you know, miracle escape you know, toys that get him out of trouble like some of the other Bonds. The modern day Q, I thought that was brilliant what they did with that. That guy's just a young computer geek who you know, that so I love the way they modernized the series. So if they can continue to crank out Daniel Craig's, even though he's advancing in age now to where he would maybe be too old to be Bond, but I'd be fine with that if the movies are still good and the storylines are good. I don't need to see a fresh face James Bond every 5 minutes. You know, especially with some of the ideas they're tinkering with.
I'd also be okay if they never used AI on Roger Moore, so we could never see him as as a James Bond again.
You know,
You
poor
talk
Roger
about
Moore. The stories got so silly in the
I know,
Roger
right?
Moore era. It almost ruined the franchise, and they finally got smart. If you look at the last two movies Roger Moore made, they started to kind of change that. So you know, and then they transitioned again to Timothy Moore, who was not Timothy Moore, Timothy Dalton,
Yeah.
who was just too hardcore. He was not even a handsome guy. He wasn't suave. And then Pierce Brosnan, who was kind of a good mix of both.
I kind of liked him.
Yeah, I like, and the stories got better. Pierce Brosnan had so much better stories as Bond, with The World Is Not Enough and Goldeneye, some of those ones he made, as opposed to the garbage that poor Roger Moore had to endure.
Well, Roger Moore started turning into just an old creepy slut. I
A
mean,
spoof. Yeah.
I mean, every time I saw him, it was like watching my grandpa who was trying to work out in the gym, who was still hitting on these 18-year-olds at poker tables. I'm like,
Yeah.
it actually made me feel a little uncomfortable. But yeah, that would be okay.
Yeah,
with us
I
too.
mean Roger Moore at the end of his Bond run when he was about 65, you know, you had 21-year-olds dropping trowel at the very sight of him. Oh, you know, come on, man. That's why I wrote my book. What does George Clooney have that I ain't got? That was the first chapter of my book is about this Entertainment Tonight reporter. She was like 25 years old, and they showed Clooney getting some kind of Lifetime Achievement Award, and she goes, "Oh, he won my Lifetime Achievement Award a long time ago." I said, "Oh, come on, he's old enough to be your great grandfather."
Always new material, and you'll check it out on TV too. ABC 3340. We're on every single Saturday morning from 10:30 to 11 o'clock. Of course, the legendary and of course the entire crew is going to be on their case with all kinds of picks. We're in the midst of a March Madness. It is super good right now. And we knew it was coming, man. There's 12s, there's 13s, there's 14s, there's 15 seeds. We knew it was coming. We'll talk more about it coming up on Saturday morning. You never know. We're going to have a special guest as well. Check out Keefer and Tony Kurre again this Saturday morning. Of course, Kip show's right here. Need to Know in the Keefer and Kurre Show on the TKR app. Thank you, brother. We'll catch up next week.
All right, Tony, always enjoy it.
This has been a special presentation of Tony Kurre Radio.